Gators Breakdown episode 39. We are ready to go. We're ready. I mean, it's official visit weekend two, post of that, as I mentioned, and still no commits for the Gators after two official visit weekends. But I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And Joey joins me on this episode. Again, we maybe might make it twice a week. We'll see what happens, but Joey's going to join me early week this time, not midweek. So a little bit of change there, but not big change. As you know, Joey joins us every week. You can find Joey on Twitter at JoeyV_SEC Sports. I caught that update, Joey.
You like that?
I did. So there where you can find me and Joey on Twitter. And you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Just search on those sites or get the links by following us on Twitter at Gators Breakdown, and on Facebook, just search Gators Breakdown. So, Joey, it was another official visit weekend. Still no commits coming from two official visit weekends now. Any worry, just before we dive into kind of what happened, any short worry from you about not getting
No, I think you have to come out of this weekend with a little optimism, actually. The word spread that Gators' number one offensive line target decommitted from Michigan yesterday. That was huge. And, a lot of people speculate it was after his Miami visit, but we all know that he's coming up to Florida this weekend. And almost everybody that, follows recruiting and all the experts expect him to flip to Florida. So, and then the news came down this morning from ESPN saying that Chasen out of Houston, Texas, canceled his OV to USC this weekend, and he's coming to Gainesville. So that's huge. He's ranked number 34 in the ESPN 300. That would be Florida's highest commit if he were to sign with Florida. And I think that would be just a massive coup signing day poll by McElwain.
Yeah, it would be a second linebacker from Texas too if they could pull Levi Jones as well. You got to look at that would be a big coup, as you said, if you can pull two big time linebackers from the state of Texas. So we'll look back at this last official visit weekend. Here's a list for you. I know we ran it down for you last week, but just in case you forgot: Jake Allen, Malik Davis, Daquan Green, T.J. Moore, Zachary Carter, Marco Wilson, all those commits there. And then C.J. Henderson, Elijah Conliffe, Tadero Slayton, and Nick Smith all came in as well as uncommitted prospects. It was good for them, Joey. I think that, especially for Henderson, Conliffe, Slayton, and Smith to get to hang out with guys who have been already committed for some time, and especially with Jake Allen and Zachary Carter, who have been, if you follow them on social media, kind of been the biggest recruiters of the commits so far. I think it was pretty important to get some of those targets that Florida's looking at, ingrained with a lot of these commits that were also on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Apparently Zach Carter was sitting with the uncommits this weekend at dinner, trying to recruit them. And he's been a recruiter for Florida. And I think I think commits do a better job of recruiting, I think, at times than coaches do, because they can relate. They're the same age. They're going through what the other the recruits are going through. And it's great to have guys in the class like Daquan Green and Zach Carter and Marco Wilson, and guys that are really loyal to this class that have done nothing but, help recruit other guys. I'm really excited about the uncommits that visited this weekend. I think actually all of them are Gators. From everything that I hear, I'm pretty sure that every single one of them will end up signing with Florida next week. It's this weekend coming up, David. That's the huge weekend. There's going to be some big names on campus, and we talked before a couple weeks ago. These are young kids. These are 17 and 18-year-olds. Out of sight, out of mind. So Florida's going to be in their sights and in their minds come signing day, because these kids are going to have the last official visit the weekend before signing day. And I think that's huge, because these kids are emotional a lot of times. A lot of times they make decisions based on, a feel-good situation. And, Florida has to really feel good about their chances with getting some of these big names on campus the last weekend before signing day, because, as you know, the dead period starts Monday. So basically after Sunday, the coaches have no contact whatsoever with these kids. So Sunday, when these kids leave Gainesville, you need to make them want to return as soon as possible.
Agree, and we kind of saw that even though he's been committed for a while, Zachary Carter shut down his recruitment over this past weekend. There's not really a worry with him. He's been recruited for a while. We mentioned he's been recruiting pretty hard for Florida as always, and he's kind of always hinted that Florida fans will be happy on signing day. He was going to visit Bama. He called that off, so Zachary Carter for sure would definitely be a Gator. And then, I mean, I'm kind of going to go back and kind of review what happened this past weekend from what came out. Malik Davis, also from the Tampa area. If you asked him, he even says Christopher Henderson, Elijah Conliffe, Nick Smith, Daryl Slayton. He, in his mind, they're all coming to be Gators. So, Joey, as you mentioned, those uncommitted prospects do look like, right now. We've kind of known C.J. Henderson and Slayton kind of to be heavy Gator leans now, and once Nick Smith decommitted from NC State, looked to be a heavy Gator lean as well. Now Conliffe come in off of a visit from Tennessee, and he says Florida, showed him everything he wanted to see from Florida. So I think seeing that from Malik Davis and also Daquan Green also said he felt good about Florida landing these uncommitted prospects. And of course, you expect to hear that, they're off the high of a visit. But quote, from 24/7, I think we got a grab on Nick Smith and CJ Henderson. This came from Daquan Green. He goes, I think we got them. They look real interested and they had a lot of fun. So, yes, like I said, they're coming off the high of a visit. Everything's kind of good right now, and that's the way it looks. But I think something is to be said. You can glean a little bit from what these players are saying of bringing in these uncommitted prospects. And I want to dive into Nick Smith a little bit. This guy kind of really impresses me. I know his offer sheet is just now kind of getting out there where some big schools are looking at him. He was committed to NC State, like I said, and visited UF this past weekend. Also considering LSU, Louisville, Michigan State. He visited Michigan State last week. Many see him as an underrated prospect since he is only a 3-star. But if you look at his film, he's relentless. He's everywhere. Many think he has 4-star potential based off of his film that people are just now getting around to seeing. And Joey, I kind of liken him to, he really fits the Jared Davis mold of being better than his star ranking.
we always go back to the Jared Davis, don't we? About guys that outplay their billings.
But what I'm really talking about just because of his position and where he plays.
Absolutely, and I completely understand it. I've seen him. I live in Central Florida. He's a Central Florida kid. Dr. Phillips High School. Some big prospects come out of Dr. Phillips. Calvin Ashley, who's now in Maryland, but he was at Dr. Phillips before he transferred out of state. Clinton Dix was a Dr. Phillips product. Went to Alabama. There's been a couple others, but it's a big time program. It's 8A football, which is the biggest in the state of Florida. I'm pretty sure there's about 4,000 or 5,000 kids in that high school. It's huge, Dr. Phillips High School. So they can recruit, they get kids from all over the Central Florida area to go there. And, because it's such a huge school and they have an excellent football program. And Nick Smith is a stud, man. Like you said, you watch his film and he just jumps off the screen. Really excited about getting him in. And like you said, there's some of these guys that, rate these recruits, they miss a lot of times. I mean, sometimes they miss on the 5 stars and sometimes they miss on the 2 and 3 stars. So, it goes both ways. We've seen, guys that never live up to their 5-star potential and guys that exceed 3-star potential. It just happens. There's a margin for error in recruiting. But I'm really excited about Elijah Conliffe. We talked about him last week on the show. Getting him away from Tennessee, who was pretty much his favorite leading up to this weekend, to get him, I think that's huge. And he's another underrated guy. I mean, if you watch his tape, he's a monster. I'm really excited about Elijah Conliffe possibly being a Gator. And these articles that are out about, big name that are uncommitted right now, Daryl Slayton's name comes up in every single article. Daryl Slayton would be a huge pull for McElwain. Not only is he a ridiculously good player, he's versatile. You can play him offense, defense, but he wants to play defensive line, and that's probably what he's going to end up playing, which is great for Florida because the defensive tackle position is something that Florida needs to fill right now. And Daryl Slayton could end up being a ridiculously good 3-year player for Florida at the defensive tackle position. We need to fill the shoes that, Caleb Brantley left, and Jonathan Bullard and Tadaro Slayton could be that guy. I mean, he's a monster. And, another guy that I'm really excited about too, that's, been committed to Florida is TJ Moore.
Mm-hmm.
We need to talk about him a little more. He's a stud. He's a big guy, man. He's huge. He's 17, 18 years old, but he's 6'6", 308. I mean, he's huge. I'm excited about him. And
the good thing about him, he's excited to be a Gator.
Absolutely. And he wants it. And I want guys like that, and I'm really excited about this class. Like I told you last week, I think it's going to finish around 11 or 12. But if Florida does pull a signing day, a big name on signing day, it could be a top 10 class. And I will not, today I sit here before you guys saying I will not be surprised if Florida has a top 10 class come next Wednesday.
Yeah, you mentioned Slayton, and I'll go to CJ Henderson as well. Those are two guys I was kind of really hoping we would see either them shutting down the rest of their visits or, maybe even committing this past week. Those were the two guys I really was hoping.
Well, don't forget CJ Henderson's in Orlando right now at the under-19 All-American game, the All-Star game. So he's there all week for practices. So if you want to say his recruitment shut down, it kind of is, because he's not even going to be at home, and Florida coaches are allowed to visit him while he's there, actually. So, Florida could take the short drive down to Orlando and go see him as much as they want. And Florida commit Elijah Blades as his roommate this week. So don't, think that they're not going to be talking about their future in Gainesville this week.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be talking about their future at Miami.
No.
Because we know Blades is not going there, and Henderson, that's about the only school related with his name. So you're right. They room together, and hopefully they'll be talking plenty of Gators. But it was, like I mentioned, it was Henderson and Slayton. I was kind of hoping those would be the two guys. If guys were going to commit this past weekend off the visit, the two guys that I was really looking forward to that would do it. I don't think it's a negative that they didn't do it. That's not what I'm trying to say. For those listening, it's just I would feel much better if they would just went ahead and shut it down. But I still think most of those guys are Gators. I don't think there's too much to worry about. But Joey, one guy that's kind of putting it out there a little bit, who is maybe starting to worry some Gator fans, is Elijah Blades coming off his Nebraska visit. He's probably kind of going up in the air if he's going to visit USC or not. He probably won't, because of what he's doing this week, but he did visit Nebraska. A lot of people were saying he really enjoyed that visit. Is it just a lot of talk? He's been committed to Florida for some time now, and he's talks up Florida much more than he does any other school. If you follow him on Twitter, of course, he's been committed to Florida for a while. That might be part of the reason. Many have heard that he's going to stick with Florida, but now some word that Nebraska really is getting him something to think about. Joey, do you see this as a potential flip and something Florida should be worried about?
Well, with anybody that's been committed for a long time, you always worry. It's just like being married for a long time. 20 years into your marriage, you got to keep things fresh, because people get curious and they want to wander away. I mean, that's how it is. It's human nature. But, Nebraska probably did give him something to think about. Mike Riley's a good coach and he's a good recruiter. But also Nebraska had about 6-degree weather while Elijah Blades was on his visit. And he did make a comment about how cold it was there in Lincoln when he was there. And he's from Southern California. I doubt that he's going to want to make a jump to Nebraska in the middle of wintertime from Southern California. But obviously, there is a small percentage, I think, that he does flip. And it doesn't help that Florida has certain people on Twitter that, professionals tweeting at recruits. And this certain professional has done this before. Supposedly cost Florida a recruit. I don't know if you remember, about 4 or 5 years ago, a certain defensive tackle that ended up going to Auburn based on a premature tweet on signing day. And apparently word is that it did cause the certain recruit to change his decision. And that individual also started on Twitter a little firestorm with Elijah Blades. I won't name names. We all know who we're talking about. But, one thing that I heavily believe in, if you have nothing positive to say at a recruit, don't tweet that recruit. All you're going to do is make things worse for yourself or your school. It's foolish. Tweet words of encouragement to a recruit, whether you're a reporter, whether you're, you work for a recruiting service, whether you're just a fan, whether you work for the school. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all, because these guys listen. Just like coaches watch recruits' Twitter accounts, recruits watch fans' Twitter accounts. Okay, they say it doesn't matter, a lot of them, but it really does. I mean, these kids are young, they're impressionable. It's just natural. These aren't professionals that are 25, 30 years old that have been in the NFL for years and know how to shut it down and not look at their notifications. These are kids that, this is their life. Social media is the part of their life. It's who they are. So, I think Elijah Blades does stick in the end. I think him being with CJ Henderson this week in Orlando actually helps Florida. I think it's huge. And like you said, I think him being in Orlando this week kind of helps Florida keep him away from USC. So I do think he sticks.
Good deal. And Joe, you mentioned Conliffe. I think just a little quick update on him. Visit did go well. Butch Jones plans to visit him. We've been tonight. We record this on Monday night. Butch Jones is going to visit him. McElwain already used his in-home, so Chris Rumpf will see him on Tuesday when most people will listen to this podcast. So it will be, Florida will get another shot at Conliffe when they go in-home with him on Tuesday. And also updating Nick Smith, we mentioned him, how he kind of fits. So it looks like Florida really made some inroads with him. Kind of probably, I would say Florida is in the lead right now to go from there. And Joey, I think Daquan Green, we'll keep going with the Tennessee theme here. Says he will visit Tennessee next weekend, but I really don't. It would be a huge, huge surprise if he ended up not going to Florida. I think this is just a trip just to make a trip.
Yeah. Daquan Green's been another, outspoken recruit for Florida. He's been one of those loyal guys like Zach Carter. So I think this is just doing due diligence, just like the James Robinson to Ohio State visit. I think he's just getting a free trip out of it, trying to see, as much as he can before he shuts it down. So before signing day. So he's probably the least I'm concerned about flipping, actually, out of the entire class.
Gotcha. Yeah, me too. So we'll talk about guys who were on campus this past weekend. Joey, you mentioned Kyleon Hebert decommitting from Michigan. Looks to be a Hurricane Florida Gators battle moving forward. Monday. So today is Monday. He did come out today and said he would like to know who Florida's offensive line coach is. I'm sure he has an inkling of who that is. He's probably not going to share too much out there in the public. It looks like Auburn's pretty much out of the picture now. I know there was some rumors he'd be taking that visit coming up this weekend. So I think it's definitely a Florida-Miami battle moving forward. And you mentioned before, Cane fans felt kind of comfortable with him decommitting coming off of a Miami visit. So I don't necessarily think there's too much to read into there. Just kind of happened to be that way. I think it is. I mean, Miami's in this, don't get me wrong, but most people have been kind of inkling that Hebert has been leaning towards Florida for some time now.
Yeah. I think it was just kind of like written on the wall that Hebert was either going to decommit from Michigan before the visit, or else he was just going to flip on signing day. I think Florida fans feel pretty comfortable about Hebert. I think if he went to Miami, I think that'd be a huge, huge, huge dagger in the recruiting class for Florida. I think you got to get a guy like that because Florida's kind of been the favorite, even though he's been committed to Michigan for a while. I think Florida's been the favorite for a while, which is crazy, I think actually Harbaugh kind of gave up recruiting him because I think that even Michigan fans, if you listen to them on social media, they gave up weeks ago on him. So I'm not really worried about that. One name that does stand out to me this weekend, actually, that's coming in is LeBron Ray. I said it to you before. He's a 5-star on 24/7. Fighting Alabama. He just came off his Alabama visit this past weekend, kind of the hometown team. But he's a stud. And if Florida can somehow woo him, I mean, this will be a top 10 class if Florida signs LeBron Ray. I mean, LeBron Ray is big time recruit. A lot of guys say that he is the best defensive end in the class. And it's going to be huge if Florida can kind of somehow get him to get away from Nick Saban. This would be another kind of Eddie Pinheiro, McElwain coup of pulling him away from Saban, kind of, and I think that this is kind of get backs, I think, for Alex Leatherwood. I think McElwain needs this, needs to steal him away from Alabama. But I'm really excited about this weekend. You got Georgia commit Devontae Wyatt coming in, Miami commit Zalante Hillary, Bear. The Gaddy twins will be in town. I think they're both Gators. I think if they have a good time this weekend, we both said that, yep, we're pretty sure that they're going to be in the class. One of them's really good. The other one's just okay. Brian Edwards is coming in, and Brad Stewart. Brad Stewart was a guy we talked about last weekend.
I was about to bring him up. Yep.
Yeah, that Florida really needs, David. I think pulling him out of Louisiana would be huge. Huge.
I agree, and he's just coming off an Arkansas visit, and was a good visit. So Arkansas is throwing their name into the hat with Arizona State, but it looks like Florida's been in good shape for Ed Stewart for some time now. He's not going to announce till National Signing Day, but he visited Friday Night Lights and kind of has been a Gator lean since then. He wants to be a part of that Gator secondary. If you remember right, it looked like he was going to commit back in August. Of right before last football season, and many people believe he was going to pick Florida then, and he delayed his decision going there. But with Florida's secondary and how that's going to work out with depth chart, it would be very, very, very surprised if he doesn't end up a Gator.
Yeah, absolutely, and then the same with Brian Edwards. We could say that it's between Florida and Miami, I guess. He's a Miramar kid. Right. But Louisville's kind of in the picture right now as well. But with Todd Grantham leaving Louisville a couple weeks ago, I don't see him. I see him being a Gator or a Cane, one of the two. But I think that Florida has a chance to get probably 4 or 5 commits from this coming OV weekend. So, but I think LeBron Ray is just that name that just jumps off the page. He's that guy that he's that Dante Fowler-esque signing day flip, that guy that just is going to make the fan base go absolutely bananas. Similar position, strong side defensive end. And I'm pretty sure that Florida stopped recruiting Jarvis Parks.
Yeah.
I think he's all Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban flew in a helicopter to his school last week, and, he was on Twitter with Saban. I'm pretty sure he's going to, be honest, I'll trade LeBron Ray for Jarvis Parks any day of the week. Jarvis Parks played 2 years of football. That's it. The football coach had a really bad defense and down at Sebastian River, which is only about 30 minutes south of where I live. And Jarvis Parks was kind of a nerdy kid. Never really played sports, and he was huge. I mean, he was just a monster. The football coach went to him and said, "Hey, why don't you come out and play for our football team?" And he went out and he was really good at it. And he was just natural. And he played his junior and senior year, and that was it. So he was just that good that he started getting offers within, after one season. He's excellent, but I'll take LeBron Ray over Jarvis Parks any day.
I hear you on that. Then, Joey, I think before I was going to go on before we go on this one, I was going to kind of give the guys I think Florida may end up with. Florida, has 15 commits right now, and see what you think about this list, and you can throw in who you're on, or who kind of on your list as well. I mentioned Florida has 15 commits going in, and these are the guys that I think could end up in this class as it stands right now. I'm still going to throw Elijah Blades, even though he is currently committed. He's about the only guy I see on the current commit list that could not be a Gator right now, as we hear things about Nebraska. But I'll go down the list here: Kaleon Hebert, Christopher Henderson, Tadaro Slayton, Nick Smith, the Gaddy twins. I think do end up Gators. I think all they need is that offer and enjoy themselves this weekend. I think they're Gators. James Robinson, Brad Stewart, Brian Edwards, and then maybe Levi Jones and Elijah Conliffe. Can you think of, maybe anyone you want to throw in on that list? I mean, if that happens, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, we did leave out Kaylavon Chasen, who's
Right.
visiting this weekend as well. Surprise OV coming from Houston,
Yeah, I want to
and
see his
I
visit before I kind of, I honestly,
yeah,
I
who
didn't know much.
knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? This is very very weird. How it just came out, 5 days before he's supposed to show up. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's just kind of smoke and mirrors. I don't know if he's taking a free trip.
Right. It could be the
But a lot of
Daquan Green to
people,
Tennessee.
absolutely, a lot of people think he's a Texas guy because of Tom Herman. But who knows? We've seen guys that come into Gainesville and know nothing about it, and they want to be Gators after they leave. So I said, I'm not putting too much stock into it. The coaching staff did visit Levi Jones today at his high school in Texas, in Austin, Texas. So that's huge. Apparently the visit went really well. So, I'm really excited. If Florida can somehow pull David, I mean, imagine this. If Florida could somehow pull Levi Jones and LeBron Ray in the same class, I mean, you're talking a signing day coming from the dead. I mean, Florida was left for dead in the recruiting ranks, weeks ago.
Right.
People are ready to jump off of roofs and cut their wrists for this signing class. And could you imagine if McElwain ends up signing those guys on signing day? I mean, that's huge. That would be huge for a defense that we said was going to be very subpar next year compared to what it's been.
Yeah, that would
So,
ease.
and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that would ease a lot of worry of Gator fans and what they have about McElwain. I think the big thing fans look at now is, and I get the worry here, and I get the angst a little bit is you're Florida a week before signing day. You should never have only 15 commits. I get that argument. I don't I we'll see what happens on signing day, but I do get the argument that Florida should never have 15 commits going into signing day and should have most of these guys wrapped up. We've kind of talked about it, our stay on the program, the issues that Florida faced coming in with Jim McElwain and recruiting facilities and how all that goes about. But I think another thing was we have to remember Jim McElwain doesn't have the relationships a lot of these other coaches in the South that he's going against had when he came in. He was gone out of the region. He was in Colorado coaching. He didn't have the relationships, Kirby Smart, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban, all these coaches that are rivals that he's going against on the recruiting trail. They were on these guys that they're recruiting since 10th grade. He came in when these guys were in 10th grade. So he had to scrounge up a recruiting class and then get on the younger guys that he's kind of recruiting now. So that's why you're seeing the 15 commits a week before signing day. He's still trying to get those relationships working.
And people want to compare, Georgia and Kirby Smart's in his second year in his class. Kirby Smart was recruiting these kids while he was at Alabama.
Yep.
He had relationships with these kids being in the Southeastern Conference, 2-3 years ago. You can't even compare. McElwain was in another time zone, 2 time zones away. McElwain at Colorado State was not looking at the same kids that Florida recruits. You just can't. I mean, it's geographics, and it's also just not plausible for McElwain to go and look at a 4 and a 5-star kid from Florida, or a 4 and a 5-star kid from Georgia or Alabama. Kirby Smart had relationships with these kids while he was at Alabama. So these kids that are coming to him, he knew when he was just a coordinator because Alabama was recruiting these 4 and 5-star kids when he was there. So it's not even comparable, and this whole thing about, him not having, starting, but I have heard in the past, and not only with McElwain, I have heard with Muschamp that Muschamp wasn't recruiting kids, early. He didn't like to, give the early offers like Les Miles did and Saban does and, all that stuff. So I have heard that about Florida before, but as far as that with McElwain, yeah, talk to me in year 4, in year 5, but in year 2, in year 3, don't give me that nonsense. He has no relationship with these kids. Don't forget when he left the SEC in 2011 to take the job at Colorado State, these kids were like in 7th grade, so he knows nothing about the kids that he's recruiting right now, as opposed to, what Kirby Smart knew about them 3-4 years ago, so it's just no comparison. And that argument to me is just, it's a wash. It's garbage. It's just nonsense. I did see you liked an article that Frank Frangie put out out of Jacksonville. He's a pretty insightful guy. You like that? The jury's still out on McElwain. We can't say that he's a bad recruiter yet. It's irresponsible to say Jim McElwain's a bad recruiter because he's only had 2 classes to get his guys in. And to be honest, his last year's class, 75% of his class was early enrollees. So of course signing day was less than spectacular, I mean, you can't expect, it's not his fault that, 75% of the kids he recruited wanted to get done with high school early. In the year before, for being a first class, look who was in his class the year before: Antonio Callaway, Jordan Scarlett. His first year, a month and a half on the job, and he's getting Jordan Scarlett, Antonio Callaway, CC Jefferson. Martez Ivy in his first class, 5-star guys. I mean, 4-star, 5-star guys. See, you can't. The book is still out on if he can recruit. If you say McElwain can't recruit, it's irresponsible. It's ignorant. And I've started to just unfollow people on Twitter and mute them. I just can't take it anymore. Come talk to me on February 2nd, next Thursday, and we'll see where Florida finishes. If Florida finishes out of the top 15, I promise you, and loses a couple commits, I promise you that I will be the first one to go on Twitter and say McElwain struggles with recruiting, and we really have to look at him with a raised eyebrow. But I promise you this: if Florida finishes in a top 10 class, I said this earlier today, I said, you guys just need to shut the hell up because, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this nonsense where all these fans have the knife to the wrist, and I'm over it. It's getting annoying. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, it does get old. And I mean, look, we're not saying we're not saying there's not issues. We know there's issues. Yes, Florida shouldn't be, in this position, and Florida should be able to sneeze and have a top 5 class.
It's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore. No one but Alabama, outside of Alabama, can sneeze and have a top 5 class.
Right.
Nobody.
It is a different world than when Urban Meyer followed Ron Zook, and it is a different recruiting world now. Kids are divas. They're, while we think the notion out there is Florida should be able to sneeze and get who they want, you can't say Florida is Florida anymore. It's just not how it works anymore. Florida fell behind on facilities. Recruits are divas now, and they want that type of stuff. It's not just Florida recruits itself anymore. You have to work at it. You can't fall behind. Everybody's constantly going, and upgrading. We'll see what Jim McElwain does. There's a week till signing day. Like Joey said, if you want to talk to us next week about how Florida finishes, if it's not up to par, go right ahead. But you can't slam it right now until pen comes to paper and it goes to that fax machine on next Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think that Florida's going to have a good class. Like I said, I will not be surprised if Florida breaks the top 10 and sits around 9 or 10. Especially if you get a name like LeBron Ray or Levi Jones or both. It's natural. The reason Florida's class sits a little low right now is not because of the lack of stars. It's because of the lack of commits. Florida 15. Only has 15 commits right now. There's other schools that already have 23, 24 commits. That's what boosts your ratings up. It rankings up. It's not so much the stars that that you have.
Tennessee's near top 10, and probably 90% of the class is 3 stars.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll slide down when signing day comes. I mean, it's just natural. And Florida's going to move up. Florida's at 15 commits right now, Dave. You said 15 commits. And Florida will take about 26 or 27, right? So Florida's got room for about 11 or 12 more.
Yeah, I had, like I said,
commits, correct?
Yeah, when I was going down my list, I had about 11 more. So
11 more. And you think that all 4 of the uncommits this weekend signed with Florida? All 4, correct?
I think the only one I have a question on is Conliffe, but I lean towards Florida now. So when I gave my list, Hebert, Henderson, Slayton, Nick Smith, the Gaddy twins, Robinson, Stewart, Edwards, and I put maybe Levi Jones and Conliffe. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 11 spots.
11 spots. So there you go. So if all 4 uncommits this weekend commit to Florida, and and Florida has no signing day flips that go against them. Florida's got 6 or 7 more spots to go of recruits. We think James Robinson's going to be a Gator, so that's one right there. So Florida will have 6 or 7 spots available on signing day for guys that are either coming next weekend or guys that we don't know about. So it's going to be there. Florida's going to move up in the rankings naturally. Even if they don't nail the big names, Florida's naturally probably going to break the top 15 just because Florida's going to fill those spots and Florida's going to move up, and it's just going to happen. So it just depends on who they land and what happens. But don't look at the rankings right now based on stars and based on who Florida's not getting. It's because Florida only has 15 commits, and a lot of other schools already have almost their entire class filled with commits.
Yep, this class is either going to go from good to very good. Now, we know it's not going to be elite. Top 5 around there is elite. Florida's in no way getting that. But this class can be good to very good. And I guess the only worry is, you're still behind Georgia. You're still behind Alabama. You're behind FSU, your big rivals. But
I don't care about Georgia. I don't care about Georgia having a top 5 class because until they prove they can beat Florida and win the SEC East, to me, all the class ranking is just hype. That's it. It's hype. Florida State proves they can win with top 5 classes. Alabama can win with top 5 classes. Ohio State can win with top 5 classes. Tennessee and Georgia, all hype, no substance until I see it.
Yep, that's what happens when you're led by Butch Jones.
And Kirby Smart / Will Muschamp 2.0.
That leaning that way, jury's still out, but we'll see. I'm not a huge fan of what I've seen in year 1 there. So that was a look back at this past weekend recruiting for the Gators when they had their official visits. Second weekend, one more weekend to go before signing day. We'll see about another show this week. I might do some Joey may join me. We'll talk about that.
Definitely a signing day eve show next Tuesday night.
We'll go ahead and preview next week. We'll definitely do
and we'll get Mark Moses on. Definitely have Mark on.
We'll definitely have Mark on next week, whether it be pre-signing day, post-signing day, maybe both. We'll see about that. But will have you covered on signing day.
Yeah.
We'll have a big preview show, I guess, next Monday
and then
or Tuesday.
Show that night, signing day night as well. Absolutely.
Yep, and signing day night for sure. We will have you covered here on Gators Breakdown. As I mentioned, you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Find us on Twitter at Gators Breakdown and on Facebook as well. Just search Gators Breakdown. You can find links for all the past podcasts where you can check out our State of the Program episode. That was pretty good. And also some other things out there as well. So for Joey, I'm Dave. Thanks for listening to Gators Breakdown.